Hello and welcome to another 2 Network transfer update. We've just had the confirmation through. We've signed our second permanent player of the summer. It is the South Korean captain Ki Sung-yueng, has come in from Swansea. He was out of contract. He's signed today for Newcastle United on a 2-year deal. Sort of been very much under the radar, this. I don't think anybody really saw this coming, and I think what I will say first and foremost is that it's nice to actually have a new player through the door before pre-season training starts next week, which, as we all know, in previous summer transfer windows, it's something that we know Rafa has always wanted to have his players in as early as possible. Does this mean he's a replacement for Marino? We don't know that yet. It could be. Yes, he's coming on a free, but he has pedigree in the Premier League. He's an international player, the international captain of South Korea. He got 2 games in the World Cup before they got knocked out. He's a player who I've always very kind of quietly admired from a distance. I know he was played for our rival Sunderland and most recently Swansea, who obviously got relegated, and he's exercised the right not to stay with them. I think he's a very, very tidy squad player. I think it's a very shrewd buy. He is a very, very good passer of the ball. I mean, if we look at some of his stats over the recent seasons, his pass completion has been very, very impressive indeed. For example, in the latest season for Swansea, 25 games altogether, 88% pass completion. Season before, 89.5 pass completion. For South Korea in those 2 games, 93.7. 2015-16 for Swansea, 90.9 pass success rate. So beyond that, 89.8, 90.7. I mean, the lowest he's racking up is 88 pass completion, which is very good. He's a no-frills player. Don't expect him to completely replace or be pushing forward, but we do know that he's a very safe and reliable player. His pass completion rate is probably quite high because he will play maybe a lot of sensible side balls. He will just keep things ticking over. He's very comfortable in possession. I think he's got very good technique from when I've seen him play live, certainly over at St James's Park. And he's a player who, as I said, is dependable, and for a free, given the circumstance that we're in, yes, do we want to be signing £20 million midfielders? Of course we do. But there's an opportunity there, and I'd like to think that he won't be a Marino replacement, although that could prove to be the case. Let's not kid ourselves. But I'd like to think he was more of a replacement for the outgoing Jack Colback or Henri Saivet, to be that squad player, to push Shelvey or whoever else is in midfield. He's a player who can be defensive, but he can often pop up with a goal or 2. He's got good passing range. He likes to long pass. He likes to have a shot long. He likes to have some long shots from outside the box, which we tend to, whether it was intentional or not last season, we tend to do a lot of, but didn't score too many. So he's a player who, 29, very, very experienced in the Premier League with Swansea, in internationals with South Korea as well, and I believe he's our first fully fledged Asian player to play for Newcastle United. That's yet to be fully. I know that Chopra had Indian descendancy, but as a South Korean international, it's definitely the first South Korean player to have ever played for Newcastle United as well. So that's very exciting. I think it's just a really shrewd buy. I know Rafa's happy. Rafa sees him as somebody who's experienced. We did have one of the youngest squads in the Premier League last season, so it's nice to have an option there of a player who will probably be ahead of Isaac Hayden in the pecking order, who can bring his experience. It basically just bolsters our subs bench. I still fully expect Shelvey and Diarmi to start the first game of the new season, but Ki is a player who can come on and calm things down. He's composed. He's got a really nice left foot on him. And given that we've seen absolutely no bids for anybody, I mean, as it stands, we still haven't made any cash bids for anybody. But I called this, I knew early doors, as I'm sure many of you might have called as well, that Rafa this season, you know, especially what happened last summer, was always going to address free transfers out of contract, release clauses, certainly in the markets in Spain and possibly Portugal. So this signing makes a lot of sense. I mean, I looked at, you know, before he committed his future to Stoke, I'd sort of looked at Joe Allen early doors. Obviously, since then, they were then quoting 20 million for his services, which I don't think is realistic. But Joe Allen was somebody who I thought was a reliable, dependable Premier League midfielder who could do a job, would provide very, very good squad backup, who's still in his 20s, who could do a job. And actually, that's obviously not going to happen. But Ki's come in, and I think he can assume that same criteria. As I said, there's not much more to say to him about him than that. He might be considered a little bit lightweight for a defensive midfielder, but I think in terms of just being able to tick play over, to dictate, to calm things down, his composure, he's very comfortable on the ball from what I've seen. I think he's pretty reasonable at set pieces as well, which could be a weapon for us. So I think this is a positive sign. Many people might roll their eyes because it's a free transfer, but we've got to look at our situation. We've got to think that this is shrewd, and a player who's his country's international captain, who's just been at the World Cup and has played several consecutive seasons in the Premier League. You know, 25 appearances, 28 appearances, 33 appearances, 20. I mean, that's his last. Basically, since he's been in England, he gets injured very, very rarely. So that's another plus. He's not injury prone. He's experienced. He's 29, so he should be pretty much at the peak of his powers. And it's smart. It's a risk-free signing on a free transfer for 2 years. He's not likely to be on a lot of wages either. So I think this is a really good buy. I think this is something to be really positive about. Is Rafa Benitez going to save what little transfer budget he does have in strengthening first choice or first team players? I'd like to think so. I think Ki's coming in definitely as a squad rotation, definitely as someone who can push for first team, given his experience. But do we want to save all of our money for the positions that we're really weak in? Yes, we do. If Save and Colback leave, which they probably should, they're becoming a bit of a burden now, I think, then Ki coming in makes a lot of sense and is very good. If this is a Marino replacement, obviously Marino hasn't left yet, but I think we all expect that to happen. Will it be enough to have just Ki, Hayden in backup to Diarmi and Shelvey? Who knows? But we know that last season we did have probably more options in midfield than we did any other position. So, free transfer, I can't complain. I think it's a great little buy. Somebody I've always admired. He's a very tidy player. Rarely gives the ball away. Rarely gets injured. Lots of experience. What's not to love, people? And he's South Korean, our first South Korean player. And a little word on the new signing promotional photos from the official Newcastle United Twitter account is that he's been spotted in the new kit, which has a bit more of a white trim, but I think it looks really, really smart. Obviously, this week we've had probably a bit more confirmation that it's likely that the away strip is going to replicate the 95-96 famous Grandad collar, maroon and purple stripes, the hoops, which we all know and love, which is really good news. And I think this home kit, I mean, we've just seen it for the first time, but it looks nice and tidy. It looks really smart, and a nice tidy player wearing it too. So welcome to Newcastle United, Ki Sung-yueng. Really excited that he's bolstering the squad and he'll be in time for pre-season training starting next week, which is a rarity given how our summers usually go. So that's another plus point as well. Is he going to set the world alight? We don't know yet, but let's, expectations will be tempered. But he's a tidy player. I don't think there's a lot to get unhappy about here or to be annoyed or disappointed. It makes sense. It's risk-free, and Rafa wants him. So I think I'm going to trust the manager on this one. That's been another Toon Network transfer update. I've been Adam. Thanks very much, and hopefully I'll be back with another transfer update very, very soon. Thanks everyone. Bye-zy bye.